Hello, Brad Schielke here at Conversations with Mormons. This is part 8 of God's testimony as my secret weapon for witnessing to Mormons, as well as for thriving in life. Mormons speak much of desiring to follow Jesus' example in doing what is good and right. Their desire contains a beautiful surprise. I'll get to that shortly, but for me to reveal this surprise to them requires me to not get distracted from simplicity. Last week we saw we don't have to wait until after death to experience God's presence. We can experience it right now by measuring life by good moral expectations. We also saw that Jesus embodies these good expectations, making him the key that unlocks the moral world. Because of the embarrassingly simple nature of my style, I do occasionally get distracted. This happened twice in the last month. I got tricked away from the simplicity of Jesus. I talked informationally about right and wrong ways of thinking with two seemingly intellectual Mormons. Therefore, I didn't use the key to unlock their hearts to reveal Christ as life for them, and they walked away without experiencing joy. One surprise in seeking to follow Jesus' example is the fact that Jesus alone lived a truly human life. He succeeded at never doing evil. And because we know we should never do evil, we know we should be like he is. But we aren't. So how does a flawed person follow Jesus' perfect example? Peter alone of New Testament writers explicitly mentions Jesus' example. Peter says in his first letter that Jesus left us an example to follow in his steps. Peter goes on to explain that following in Jesus' steps is not about what I do, but about me entrusting myself to God, who always measures and evaluates based on the righteousness of Christ, rather than on my own so-called righteousness. Now that's really a surprise because we all know who's doing what is right and who isn't. And we might even get a little impatient when someone isn't doing what we think is right. Jesus always saw past behavior and kept righteousness or right relationships in view. And I'm called to follow in his example and do the same. The writer of the letter to the Hebrews gives a simple illustration to keep right relationships in view. This illustration spoke clearly to their culture, and it speaks clearly to ours as well. He writes that Jesus, as the Word of God, the message of God, the reality and meaning of God, Jesus himself is sharper than any two-edged sword, and his person is guaranteed to always cut and reveal the deep motives of the human heart. This illustration points us to life as a spiritual battle, a battle to experience good and right relationships through the perfection of Jesus. 3 of God's good expectations revealed in Jesus dominate this illustration. First, he's a person, one who bears God's image. So the sword is about him being a person instead of an object like a vending machine. And since we bear his image, we're not vending machines either. Second, one edge represents God's good expectation for measuring all humans by moral flawlessness. Third, the other edge represents God's expectation for resolving all evil. And the same writer declares later in his letter that Jesus put away all sin by the sacrifice of himself. Wow, that's certainly wonderful, but it sure is a mouthful. And this sword, which is Jesus himself, is my weapon, my tool to pierce and heal my own heart first, and then the hearts of Mormons I'm privileged to meet. The Apostle Paul says that he used no other weapons in the spiritual battle than the message of righteousness, the presence and person of Jesus Christ. I've practiced for decades using the sword on myself to experience Jesus as life for me in the present moment. And this turns my conversations with Mormons into an invitation for them to pick up this sword and join me in learning to use it on our own hearts first, and then on the hearts of others. I always begin with God's expectation of what it means to be a person rather than an object like a vending machine. I start there because we all have insecurities and we all hesitate to embrace our own vulnerability as a good thing. And I begin not with a Socratic question, but with a bold and joyful declaration. Here's my favorite. I'm so glad you're always a fully valuable person. Next week, we'll explore the importance of dealing with insecurities first, and I'll reveal how the two-edged sword is also my security blanket for thriving in life. Until then, why not join me in thanking God for sending Jesus Christ to die in your place to be that two-edged scalpel that pierces and heals your heart. Welcome to the conversation.